Unholy versus Frost. We have not spoken about Death Knights for a very long time on this channel, but just as a friendly reminder, Death Knights have always been dear to my heart and it's a fantastic class, and Blood, Unholy, Frost, all three are super solid specs. Today we are going to be looking at Coldheart Interstitia Layer 3 as casuals in my usual kind of gearing range, close to item level 170, and I'm gonna share with you my personal opinion on which spec fares better solo. What is better solo to do Torghast and other solo challenging content, Unholy or Frost? Let's look at it side by side. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Gyro. Welcome back, welcome new people, welcome old people, welcome very young and old and new people. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Today we're gonna take a look at my Death Knight. Finally, I got my Death Knight slowly, kind of in the background to level 60. My very basic gearing was applied to my Death Knight. I'm still going through Covenant campaign, which is why the item level is still fairly lowish. Kind of in the ballpark of, let me double check as I'm recording this, 167. That is my rough item level in this particular case. Unholy versus Frost, and we will continue looking at the run through Torghast Layer 3, Coldheart Interstitia, obviously solo, in this obviously not very impressive item level range, and I'll just tell you exactly how I felt at different moments in time. No, we're not gonna do the whole run, which was close to 30 minutes by the way. So that's one first thing for you. Both specs are very slow and steady. They are not fast-paced specs, at the very least not at this item level and not how I play it. You might be different, let me know in the comments down below. Now, let's start with Unholy. We're not gonna rant for too long, at least that's my goal. First and most obvious benefit of Unholy is the fact that Unholy is a pet class. Pet spec, basically. A class that enables a pet spec. With Unholy you have a Ghoul. Ghoul does actually quite a lot. Ghoul does quite a lot, and if you were not aware that in Shadowlands they've given us extra, what is it called, rune forging recipes. So we have some new rune forging recipes. For example, the rune of Apocalypse. The rune of Apocalypse attached to your weapon, which I am not running in this particular case, maybe I should have, is giving your Ghoul extra ability to add debuffs to the enemies, so that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of interesting angles to Unholy. That I think is a point number one that I'd like to make in Unholy, in the favor of Unholy. I also would like to say that Unholy has a lot of... Unholy relies on summons. Unholy has things like Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead has been a signature ability of World of Warcraft Death Knights for ever since they have been there. And even though the cooldown of 8 minutes is a little bit long, I say Army of the Dead, if you have it on cooldown, ready to fight the end boss of the level or of the whole layer 3, I'd say that makes it could make or break your your run. I think that Army of the Dead is definitely a cooldown basically of heroism or bloodlust level. Like, it's something that's a button worth pushing when you are dealing with the challenging opponents. It also depends on what kind of talents you took. Is it my layout or is it your layout? But I'm also running with extra ability to send myself into extra haste. So basically mini bloodlust, Death Knight level of bloodlust, which is the Unholy Assault talent. And obviously Dark Transformation I'm relying on a lot. I am enabling my Ghoul, I'm making sure that Ghoul is stronger, all of that kind of stuff. This is not a class guide and not a spec guide, which is why I'm sort of just giving you a few bullet points of what would resonate with me. Maybe it will resonate with you. How does Unholy feel? Unholy feels great. Unholy feels very good. I like Unholy as I always did. In fact, it was my favorite melee spec at the end of BFA. I was kind of stuck with that and I was really enjoying it through Horrific Visions and stuff. And still I'd say that it's slow and steady, very slow, very steady. Feels quite tanky. The passive effect of Daxacore boosts your and gives you a free Death Strike and boosts the healing from Death Strike, so that's all good. It kind of gives you quite a lot of self-sustain. You know how I'm a very self-sustained kind of based player in tanking and in DPS. I'd like my classes, my characters to look after themselves. I don't expect anyone else to look after them. Having said that, so these are all kind of good things, and there are a lot of good, nice, impressive performance moments where I just run into a group, summon my ghouls, run Apocalypse ability that also based on the number of festering wounds on the target summons extra ghouls, like even when my army of the dead is on cooldown, that kind of stuff. So I do that, and it's cool. It feels great. It feels great while you have all the cooldowns available to you. It feels great while you can just press a button of Apocalypse and then boom, something happens. It feels great when Unholy Assault is on cooldown, not on cooldown, and you can use on that cooldown to boost your performance. It feels, like I already said, fantastic when you can push the button of Army of the Dead and there you are. Between availability of those cooldowns, in my opinion and in my experience right here, behind the scenes, whatever, take it for what it is the fact that performance of Unholy slows down drastically. And by that I mean the swings are slow. What I have to push, Festering Strike or Scourge Strike or nothing else really, slows down drastically. Because of the slower attack speed, yeah, and because it's not a tanking spec. At that moment in time when your cooldowns are not available, you are not hasted up, you don't have something to push very actively and straight away. At that point in time, your self-healing from even Death Strike, from availability of Death Strike, slows down quite dramatically. At least that's my experience. And that is where once things got a little bit pointy, towards the pointy end of the Army of the Dead was on cooldown, and sort of that boosted boss of the layer was, you know, fairly tough, fairly challenging for me. That is where Unholy started lacking for me. I started feeling like I do not have enough haste, I do not have enough speed of attack, I do not have enough of constant boom, 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 boom. I do not have that to keep up, basically, yeah? If it makes any sense. I think that Unholy is fun, Unholy is reliable, then things get tough. The fight goes for longer than it needs to, or like the enemy is tough and you're actually stuck in the fight for quite some time. And that's where Unholy started lacking for me. Now let's switch finally to Frost. Frost feels very differently. So Frost is also a very strong DPS spec, obviously no permanent pet, but please be mindful that Blizzard gave us a summon of the ghoul for 1 minute on 2 minutes cooldown, so occasionally on fights you can still have a ghoul. Obviously no dark transformation here, but it is what it is. Frost is all about emitting frost, is all about AoE damage, is more about AoE damage. We have, you know, we still have Death and Decay, which we should use. We still are using Remorseless Winter, and if I didn't mention it explicitly, I'm not gonna do a separate video on the best Covenant for Death Knights, because you have no choice but to go Necrolord. I mean, you have choice, and some contrary people will tell me how wrong I am, but as a Death Knight, not going Necrolord, just go play another game. That's it. That's my honest opinion. Take it for what it is. So Remorseless Winter, Death and Decay, and then Abomination Limb, the slappy hand, bam 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 bam, which I love in both specs, Unholy and Frost. So that's it. Additionally to that, Howling Blast, AoE Frost, etc. So that's so much good stuff. Not to repeat everything from the very beginning, how much I love Frost, blah blah. I've actually invested a lot more time into Unholy towards the end of BFA, and you know, I was leveling in Unholy and switching between Unholy and Blood. I wasn't leveling this character in Frost, but now in the end game, as soon as I felt that boundary, that limit, that basically slowness, that inability to continue healing, continue quickly getting rid of enemies, Unholy just became too slow for me, including in Torghast. I switched to Frost. That's where the idea to put together this video came about. Like, I wasn't actually even planning to specifically compare the specs. Short version is, Frost at this item level, at this skill level of the player, performs better. It does perform better. Additionally to that, if you take a look at the powers, and I know that they are about to change, when I'm recording this video, I know they're about to change quite a bit of new legendary powers, balancing of abilities and stuff in patch 9.05 that is about to hit live service. So we might need to reconvene and see how it feels, how Unholy versus Frost feels then. But at this stage, when I'm recording this, just on the verge of that release, after having run exactly the same Coldheart Interstitia Layer 3, I was comparing apples to apples, really, on the same class, just two different specs. I can tell you that Frost feels a lot more present, a lot more constantly present. I am emanating cold all the time. I'm attacking all the time. I'm always hasted up, even with a two-hander weapon. I'm always hitting. And funnily enough, I haven't even used one of the most powerful cooldowns, the Frostworm's Fury. The Frostworm's Fury hasn't been used, and I was like even expecting to get the legendary power that boosts that ability from the end boss of Coldheart Interstitia. That's what I went here for as a Frost in Frost loot specialization, and I have not used the ability once through the run. And I can now, looking back at how many packs I have gone through when I had to blow my cooldowns and stuff, Frostworm's Fury would have made my life much easier. So that shows you how much even more noobish I am in the Frost department than I am in Unholy department. I think I'm better at Unholy for what it's worth. But overall, still, I hit a brick wall with Unholy at one point, and I wiped. I could not go ahead. I could not go further. I was too slow on healing. Their onslaught of the boss of the level overwhelmed me. With Frost, no problem. Yes, sure, slightly different combination of anima powers and stuff. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. Absolutely. Like, I am aware of that. But I can tell you that for what it's worth, Frost felt like it was performing much better. It felt much better. It felt more fun. Still very slow. It still took half an hour. At this item level, I was so much faster on a druid. I was so much faster on a hunter. I was so much faster on demon hunter. Don't even get me started. Things like that. This is slow and steady Terminator. At the same time, like, speaking of Terminator, right? At the same time, you've seen in the background, hopefully you paid attention, you've seen in the background where I pull more than I wanted to pull. Somebody aggroed who I didn't want to aggro and stuff. And I survived such pulls that even I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, even my Protection Paladin wouldn't have survived it. Protection Paladin would have mitigated a lot more damage, but wouldn't have dished out enough to get rid of them fast enough. Does it make sense? Protection Paladin would have been better in the moment, but would have had to spend a lot more time, and they would have worn him out at the end of the day, all these mobs. This guy just like, and everyone was just dead. Anyway, hopefully this makes some sense to you, what I was kind of trying to convey to you in this video. As always, not scripted at all. This one was not even bullet pointed, whatever. Fresh on the heels of running Coldheart Interstitia Layer 3 on 2 specs of one of my favorite classes. Totally recommended. At this stage, for what it's worth, unless you somehow know some secrets about Unholy that I hope you will share with me in the comments down below, I would say if you want to solo in a DPS spec, Torghast, I would suggest stick to Frost. Frost feels much better. Let me know in the comments down below what your experience has been like. Maybe I'm missing something, maybe I've picked some wrong talents. As always, I'm open to your suggestions, improvement, feedback, and all of that kind of stuff. And we'll be speaking again very soon, because there is more to say. I have a few other things to share with you. And yeah, give it 2-3 days time and we'll be talking again soon. Subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, don't skip that moment. YouTube needs to know that you like these videos. Thanks again, talk to you soon, bye bye.